everybody, it's Will. Welcome to The Danger Zone.
Woo!
The Terrible Infant Movies and TV podcast. We're back with Tasha.
Hello.
Hello, and Mike is here.
Yo.
And today we are talking about horror movies. And I guess most specifically, kind of the recent resurgence of horror movies that are not just kind of like recycled garbage for idiots. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess putting like the, if you trace the history of horror, you see that monsters and horror, they're usually mirrors for society's ills, right?
Yeah.
And the return to that sense of horror with a purpose and interesting, unique horror with a voice. And so, I don't know where we want to begin with maybe. The first thing I think of is Blumhouse, but is that kind of like a good jumping off point for the beginning of this?
I think so. I should probably look up. I interned at Blumhouse actually.
What?
I actually interned there while they were doing Whiplash, so it was kind of a weird.
Oh, that's interesting.
When they were making the turn. But let me just pull up some of Blumhouse's films.
The Purge, obviously.
So
The
but what
Purge.
was their first big,
The Conjuring, I think, was their first
really big hit, right?
Oh no, you know what their first big?
Insidious.
No,
They didn't do the Conjuring.
Paranormal Activity was their first because I remember James Wan, I think, was around when I was there.
James Wan did Saw, right?
Did
he do Saw? Am I thinking of the same person?
Let me Google it. He might be. I remember going to a 10-year.
No, he didn't. Who's the?
James
But the guy
Wan?
who did Saw is now working. He's Australian, but he's now working in the U.S., right?
Lee Whannell.
He did Insidious. Some Insidious. James Wan did Conjuring, and I don't think Conjuring was Blumhouse.
Right, James Wan did do The Conjuring.
Oh no,
It's not
James Wan
Blumhouse.
did Saw. He did Saw 1.
He did Saw. I think.
He did, yeah.
He did the
See?
good one.
I was right.
the
Everyone's
good
looking
one.
at me like I'm an idiot. He did Saw.
And he did The Conjuring and Insidious.
Yeah.
And is he
Annabelle.
Australian?
Oh, wait, he did Paranormal Activity. No, he's Asian, but let me see if he's from Australia. Australian film director,
And he's like
screenwriter, and producer.
Indonesian or something in descent?
Malaysian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't he involved in that?
Oh wow,
this time?
he's directing the upcoming Aquaman. He directed that.
Yeah,
What a
what?
turn!
Yeah.
do you think is there any way that we could conceive of Saw as like a beginning point of this new wave of horror movies? Or
I don't think horror
think that
films
was too far.
ever really went away.
No,
But
people
they're-
never
yeah.
stop making horror, but I feel
I
like
think-
we are in the middle of like an obvious trend.
I think for me, honestly, I think it starts with The Conjuring.
When was that?
2013, because I remember me.
When
you
did
and
Saw come
Danielle.
out? It's like fucking years
It's a
ago.
long time ago.
It was like 12 or 13 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
But I think for me, The Conjuring, because as a big horror fan, I think one of the downfalls of horror is that because people die, they don't really focus on character that much, or
Because
not
most
that
of the
I
time,
want-
characters aren't important.
right.
so
And not
much.
that I want drama in my horror, but they don't really focus on that aspect of it. And I think for me, The Conjuring was one of the first films that recently that mixed in, they had character, they mixed in a little bit of that drama in there, and then it was also fucking scary. And I think that's what made it really good.
Not just in horror films, but any film, it's important to make your characters someone that people relate to. But it's especially important in horror films because if you don't care about the characters, how can you be scared? Because you don't care what happens to them. But if you do, in a slasher film, it's not really scary because the first 5 or
That's
6
not the
kills
point, right?
are people you
Whatever.
don't care about.
Yeah.
And then maybe that last person you want to survive because they have a backstory. In horror films like The Conjuring, you care about the two main characters, and you care about the family because you can kind of see what's going on, and you get a little backstory, and then you even get little small tidbits like in the first one, he's like, why don't you just move? He's like, we sunk all our money into this house, we can't move.
Yeah.
And then she's like, it doesn't matter, you can't get away from it. So it's like, not only is it making you care about the characters, but it's giving you a plausible reason of why they have to do what they're going to do.
And it
right?
adds the tension because you're afraid of
I
they
watched
need this house.
I
They
think,
can't- nothing else
we
would.
watched that film together
Yeah,
in
we did.
theaters,
Yeah.
and I love horror films, but I'm rarely scared by them. And that film was really scary,
I actually haven't
same.
seen that.
and
movie,
it's
but-
really good. And it's really not very violent. I think there's only one scene where there's
and
any
that's-
blood, and it's
so
at the end.
to me, I find that the movies that really scare me the most, some of them are really gory, but the focus is on psychology and like psychological terror
and the dread and like the
but
building
if you don't
shit.
care about the characters, you can't understand their psychology. And I think all these things tie together. And like a movie that I think of that's kind of low budget and is, I don't know if it's like strictly speaking a horror movie. Have you guys seen Compliance?
Yes.
And that movie didn't scare me, but it just made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's just like so like
The monster's
it's just, like,
the human in
grinding
that.
on you. Yeah,
and it's the real story.
it's a true story.
So for me, it's like I always classify films in different ways, and there's like almost a subgenre of horror that's like Compliance. There's a movie called, I think, like American Tale, about the story of the woman in Indiana. I'm from Indiana, so I relate to it. Not relate to it, but it was interesting to see that happen in Indiana.
This is what happens to people in Indiana.
But it's what happened is these parents left their two daughters in the care of like a neighbor, and over like months the neighbor woman and like a whole bunch of neighbor kids like torture this one girl to death. Basically.
I heard about that.
I
There's two
remember
movies
this,
about it. One of them has Ellen Page in it, and another one has another one in it. But like a movie like that, it's not scary. It just makes you feel bad.
It's uncomfortable.
And that's why, and I don't really like films like that because
You don't like films like that.
I don't, because they do make you feel uncomfortable. I get the reasoning behind them, but like the reason I like horror films is because they're just fun, right? The reason like slasher films are enjoyable is because like, I mean, you obviously can't just like punch someone in the head and their head goes flying 50 feet away, right?
But it's
fun,
funny.
But
right?
it's funny.
funny.
That's what's great about horror. It's like it walks that line.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like when I say,
Or when you want to be scared, like The Conjuring's scary, but like, you know, I personally don't believe in like ghosts and like witches and all this kind of shit, but it was still scary because like they did a really good job on it. Even Insidious, which was a PG-13 movie, and I don't really like PG-13 horror movies, was really good because, at least the first one was, because, you know, the atmosphere was spooky, the content was spooky, good actors in it, you know, and I think horror is just a really smart investment because you don't need big name actors because you have like, above any other genre, you have a really built-in audience. You release a horror film and you know certain amount of people are going to go watch it no matter what. And you can see that with all the recent movies like Annabelle, Ouija, Evil Dead Remake, all these movies, none of them I think are all that good, made a ton of money at the box office because no matter what, if you release a horror movie around Halloween, you'll do at least $20-30 million in your open weekend. And when your whole budget is $5 million, you have a profitable movie right there, and you can do 2-3 sequels. Now The Conjuring is spinning off into a universe.
A lot of these movies that have been successful recently, part of it owes to the fact that they're low budget.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of pressure on them. And they also, the people who are, with Blumhouse especially, they are willing to take risks to hire creative people rather than just churning out.
That's what I
It's
love.
a low risk.
That's what I love about Blumhouse's like business model. When I like interned there, basically I talked to one of the producers for that same project that we did for business class, and basically he said like the film at like $3 million is low budget, but it's like low budget, but it's because they give the creators so much control over what they want to do. And I think because they give them, especially in horror, I feel like you have to have like a vision, you know what I mean, for it to work, and you have to be able to see that vision through. And I think that's why Blumhouse, the horror films that Blumhouse has created have been so good, is because they just say, okay, here's your money, you go off and you do this, and we're not going to interfere.
They really just let people go crazy.
Yeah, and it works. It works every time.
And I get it. It's a lot easier to take a risk on a $5 million movie versus hiring an unknown director to direct Avengers 4 and risk $300 million. I get it. You mess on that, your studio's gone.
But you can also, I feel like when you're spending $3 million on a movie, it can kind of be whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about like, you
Like,
have to
it can be-
please like the
yeah.
children and their parents, and like, you know, the teenagers have to be happy with it, so it has to be a little bit violent, but it can't be too violent for the little kids, and like, you don't have to worry about all that shit.
You just make a hard R horror movie, and it's like, you got, and then, and the other thing with horror films, I feel like, you don't even need a super complicated plot. There's, how many horror films have there been lately, like The Strangers, where it's basically a family being tormented by some masked killers outside their house? There's a bunch of them, and they all make pretty good money, and it's like, there's nothing really unique or original about these films. These are the same kind of horror films that have been made since the 60s and 70s. There's, Black Christmas. There's so many I could list off, if I wanted to think about it, about a group of people stuck in a house or a place and they're being tormented by the Purge, Evil Dead,
Cabin in the Woods, even though that's not
Cabin
Night
in the
of the Living
Woods,
Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead.
House on Haunted Hill. What's that movie called?
Yeah, House on Haunted Hill.
But any of these movies, basically, and it's like you start looking at the horror films, and they're all really similar. Group of people tormented by somebody, usually in an enclosed space.
The Descent.
Yeah, The Descent.
Ooh.
Even the film like
That movie is so.
Everyone loves that one.
You don't
I
like that
like
movie?
it. No.
I have to.
And I
I'm
watched
rolling
it-
away in my chair.
I watched it twice because I was like, maybe I watched the wrong film.
Good.
Oh, man.
But
The
even if-
scene where
yeah.
she. Spoiler alert! The scene where she comes out of that pool of blood and has like a cougar tooth and just stabs that thing in the
Yeah.
fucking eye with it. Oh,
But
it's so
even
good.
a classic film
But
like
his
Alien is
other
like
movies
that.
I did not like. That same director.
What other movies did he do?
He did like Centurion. Didn't he make that movie with Michael Fassbender?
Oh, I heard about that.
And he did Doomsday.
I heard about that. I didn't see it.
And he directs for Game of Thrones now.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't like.
You don't
but
like Game of
I
Thrones?
don't.
Okay, I'm rolling my chair away now.
Will's one of the few people I know of that doesn't like
I
Game of
stopped
Thrones.
watching it. I thought it was boring.
God, what?
Yeah.
What? Wait, how far did you get?
Season 3?
I really like Game of Thrones, and I think it's a really well-made show.
Part of it I thought was boring, but part of it is also like, this is like an old man thing. But the older I get, like the less tolerance I have for stuff that I perceive to just be like malicious.
I see.
And Game of Thrones just feels very malicious to me.
I think there sometimes it does feel like a very like Debbie Downer, where it's like you don't want to get too attached to a character because like as soon as like enough people start to like this character, they're gonna get killed.
Well, I also
just to be
feel
killed.
like to me, it's like I understand that Game of Thrones is not like the television show, at least. Honestly, I haven't read the novels, but like it's not like I wouldn't call it art in the same breath that I would call like I don't know whatever your paragon of Picasso or whoever, right?
Yeah.
But I think that like if you read Wikipedia history of the world, it's basically minus the dragons.
War of the
Game of
Roses.
Thrones. People are fucking assholes. They kill each other. They torture each other. The good guy never wins. Like, we get it. That's what we all live every fucking day. Like, if you are an artist, if you want to call them that, like, I feel like your job is to have some perspective. And I feel like Game of Thrones has no perspective, just reciting shit we already know. And it has dragons in it.
I see.
And White Walkers now.
And White Walkers,
Are
but I
those
think
the
also
The
I think
zombies? There's giants. I like
There's
giants.
giants.
there's giants
I
and
didn't know
they're
there were
giant
giants.
zombies.
And there's big
No.
wolves.
Yeah. now you gotta go.
there's-
Now I want to watch it.
There's a zombie dragon now. There's a zombie dragon
knew
now,
that,
and then there's
yeah.
big wolves. I just, I also
The
appreciate
zombie
the production
giants.
values
Wait,
of
what
it.
was it? That that's the one that got
Maybe
me.
you should just watch this last season because
Yeah.
that's when they come into play.
But they're- yeah,
but like
so-
even in there's all this slew of horror films, but even horror TV shows are doing well too. Like
Yes.
American Horror Story is going to get 10
Keeps
seasons.
going.
Yeah.
It's going to get 10 seasons.
Castle Rock.
Castle Rock, the new Stephen King thing coming out soon.
Is it horror?
It's
I
already
didn't
out.
know that. I thought it was like a
Yeah, it's like all
supernatural
his
thriller.
universes together.
Yeah. So yeah,
That
It's
sounds
his
like
books.
that's like taking acid. It's like,
And go.
I just feel like I said, I think the big thing with horror films is people like it and you have a built-in audience. So like, it just takes the pressure off if you can almost guarantee you're going to make your money back. Like you said, you can take risks because, maybe it's not the most popular film, but you're not going to lose an arm and a leg over it.
But
so try some stuff.
I think also what's interesting about now also is that, because I think they've always had that model of like, oh, it's horror, take a risk, do whatever, and if it doesn't work. But I think even more so recently, we're seeing horror films that are, because I feel like before between like 2002 and 2008 or maybe 10, it was like you go see a horror film and if it's good, then great. If it's not, you get what you expected. But I think now with like The Babadook and The Witch and I didn't like Heredity, but I know a lot of people that did. Like films like that where they're really, really good. Like, and they're not even like jump scare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even I love The Conjuring, but it relies on a lot of jump scares.
There's a lot of jump scares.
Where like The Babadook and The Witch.
I hated The Babadook.
You hated The Babadook? Oh.
It comes back to a point we made earlier. You have to like and relate to the characters.
I hate that little boy.
I hate the little boy. I wanted him to die, and the mom was dumb. And a lot of people are like, "Well, you didn't get the film." I got the fucking film. It sucked. It does, and that's fine, Not you're not going to like every film. Will doesn't like Game of Thrones. It's fine.
But everyone, I feel like everyone who is an intelligent, viewer of media, cinema, television, whatever. Hates that fucking thing if you didn't get it. It's like, yes, I did.
Yeah,
I got
it. Sucks.
That's what I hate about.
It's not a super complicated film. It's like, we got it.
2001: A Space Odyssey. When I'm like,
Can I tell you?
And people are like, well, maybe you're Sitnikov. I'm like, I know what's going on. I hate it.
I have to say, I don't like Kubrick. Period. And people say to me, "You don't get it," and I'm like, "No, I do." Kubrick is pedantic. He's childish. Like, it's the movies that he makes are like high school level metaphors.
Yeah.
Like, he's not like this great fucking genius. And I understand how important he is to film history because like he's taking like Spielberg sized spectacle. Obviously he was before Spielberg, but like that kind of concept or like, these like Ben-Hur, like these huge movies, and he's making them intellectualized, and he's taking influence from European art house cinema.
Right.
And that created a new model for how to make movies, and I get that. But I don't and maybe part of it is like if I grew up through the 60s and I saw 2001: Space Odyssey with no precedent, I'd be like, whoa. Yeah, but looking at it now, I'm just like,
it's bad. But I also think too, sorry, we're like off on a tangent, but like I saw, what is that movie? What is the Orson Welles movie?
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane. I saw that in high school and loved it. Maybe I'm just like that film nerd, but I love Citizen Kane. I didn't have to be born in that time. Yeah. And it's the same, like I've heard that argument too with 2001: A Space Odyssey. We're like, well, at the time, blah, blah. I'm like, I get that. Like, I understand that at the time, certain things are good, but like a good film is going to be able to translate. Yeah. It's not going to be just based on the technology.
I watched 2001 pretty recently. And there were shots where I was like, I don't know how they did that. And it's like 40 years later. Like there were like two shots in particular where I'm like, I have no idea how they did that. A lot of it I was like, I get it. But I was still bored.
Yeah.
But it's like, but look.
The first 5 minutes of that film are good. Like the beginning of Time and the Monkeys, I was like, okay, you got me.
You can appreciate a film and not love it.
Exactly.
Like you said, like they did some cool shots. They did. And in Citizen Kane, there's a lot of very new techniques of using the camera. It's like, cool, but like nowadays, like a film like The Babadook, it's not doing anything new technically, and if you don't like the characters, which I didn't, there's nothing for you in that film, even if you get it. And there's a lot of horror films like that, like Annabelle sucked, Ouija sucked, all these films, they suck. It doesn't matter if I think they suck, they make a ton of money.
The Witch.
Oh, I didn't like The Witch.
You didn't like The Witch?
Well, here's why I didn't like The Witch. Because The Witch to me was basically like a historical dramatic thriller. And I expected it to be like this fucking like brutal, like heart of
like
darkness, like I like well something. not high tension like violence wise, but like I really respond to movies like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the David Fincher one. It's just so bleak that it's like remorseless, and I was thinking The Witch would be like that tone.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't to me. And I think part of it was my preconceived notion of what I was going into.
Yeah. I think what I do like about those films, I think, is that they do this thing of where they show, quote unquote, the monster up front. Like, in The Babadook, I think you see him within the first 20 minutes. And to me, I think things like that, or like even The Witch, where like, spoiler alert, this happens in the first 5 minutes of the film, but like they kill the baby. Have you seen it? They like kill the baby, which I think is like the worst thing you can do. Yeah. And I feel like once you see that, you're like, where can this go?
You can't escalate.
Yeah. Well, no, I think in my mind I was thinking like, what are they if they kill the baby? They're like
anything can happen.
But then, like you said, like not much happened after that.
But I did really like that fucking goat.
The goat, Black Phillip. Spoiler alert, he's great.
The goat is awesome.
He needs to be in more
Live
stuff.
deliciously. Hashtag.
It's Black Phillip. It's Black Phillip.
That goat is the shit.
See, and for me, I'm like, I love the 80s horror films that came out. We recently just watched Reanimator. Yeah. And it's not scary, but it's so fun.
We were talking about, like, just very briefly touched upon, like, I almost feel like the Blumhouse thing and, like, a lot of these companies that have followed in the wake of Blumhouse, like, was that Kevin Smith movie? That wasn't Blumhouse, was it?
Tusk.
Yes.
Yeah. Was it them or no?
I don't think so. Let me look it up.
But like a lot of these other people who are financing these movies, I almost think it's like obviously there's a disparity here in the level of talent that's going into this, but it's almost like the Canon films. Of like you create this model where you can make movies for cheap and people will see them.
Yeah.
And when we look back at like Mike and I watch a lot of these old like Chuck Norris, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, I mean, and the Schwarzenegger movies are different because a lot like T2 is like a really fucking good movie. It's not just like a genre movie, but there's so much of their time, and I feel like these movies will give something for people to look back on and be like, this is
and
where people were.
It's already happened. Like, you know, you had that wave of found footage, you know, starting the Blair Witch Project and all the Paranormal Activity projects and all these other films of the time. And you don't see a ton of them anymore. They had their time, and you can look back on them. And it's probably going to happen the same way. I think soon we'll be getting into the reboots of all the. We already had it, like the Friday 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street. But I think it's going to happen again.
Is it the Jason one from like 2008?
Yeah,
that movie is good.
Yeah,
it is.
And that's the thing. Just because it's a reboot
love,
doesn't mean
full
it's going to be
disclosure,
horrible.
I love the fucking Jason movies.
Oh, really?
I loved it. I've seen them all, and I fucking love them.
They're fun. They're not scary at all, but they're fun.
but they're fun.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what is it with the Blair Witch Project too? It's one of those things too. Like if you look back on it, like rewatching it is not scary. The last scene is like terrifying.
Yeah, but it's just people wandering around the woods.
It's just people wandering around the woods. But at the time, we were so freaked out.
They didn't have a lot of money. I
saw that movie when I was in high school, and I went to high school in Vermont.
Oh.
And I watched it on VHS at my friend's house who lived in the middle of the woods. And,
shit.
And I didn't think that the witch was there, but I was like, this is fucking creepy. Because we're in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
In the
I have a fun
woods.
story. Like I said in another podcast or this podcast, I don't remember that. I don't really believe in like ghosts and spirits and all this stuff. And I was working on basically a pilot to pitch a haunted house, like a paranormal exploration type show. You know, back in the 2000s, they were super popular. There was like 1 million of them. So we went to like this theater that was supposed to be haunted, right, in Indiana. And we were filming, and then for a while we were just walking around exploring. And I went by myself underneath the stage, and it was really dark down there. And it's like, I know there's nothing here, but your mind starts jabbing at you, and you're like, well, did I see something? It's like, no, you didn't see nothing. And they're doing these things. Did this move? Did that move? No, it didn't move. But like your mind starts
It
like,
gets in there.
and even like when you're watching a scary
what effective movies do, right?
That's wait, I have a Blair Witch Project story as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When like a couple of months before the movie came out, they did like a special on HBO. And I was in Oklahoma for the summer, like spending the summer with my cousin. And my cousin's 7 years older than me. I was like 7 at the time, and we like did not get along. We like hated each other. And somehow like she was like watching me that night. My aunt and uncle were out, and we ended up watching that special because she loved horror stuff. And this was before the movie came out. And we were so freaked out, and we like stayed up till my aunt and uncle got home, and we were like, the Blair Witch, da da da, and they're like, there's no such thing. And we're like, no, she's gonna come and get us. Like we slept in the same bed.
And you hadn't even seen the movie.
We hadn't
it was
even
just
seen the movie.
special.
It was just that
was so when I was like the same age, like 7 or maybe 8. So my parents were divorced, so over the summer, like they were like trying to find babysitters and stuff like that, right? And like where were my brother and I going to go? And there was a point at which there was like a week or so where there was no summer camp I could go to. Neither one of my parents could take me, and so I was babysat by the son of this woman that my mom went to church with, and he was older than me. And he had all of the Halloween and Jason movies on VHS, and he made me watch them. And like halfway through Halloween, I had to go to the bathroom, and I was 100% convinced that Michael Myers was in the fucking bathroom. And I was like, I can't go in there. You have to go in and turn the light off for me. Like,
but you know, it even happens now. Like I'm like 32, and I can watch like a movie. Like I'll watch The Conjuring, and spoiler alert, that scene where she's knocking her head against the cupboard or in the closet, and she walks away, and then the other one walks over there and looks up, and the witch jumps down, and it's really scary. Even now, after I watch that, and then I walk into my dark living room, I'm like, damn it, where's this witch at? And I'm like, she's not here, but like, it doesn't matter. Like your mind.
Damn it, where's this witch at?
Yeah, it's like, damn it, where's she at? And it doesn't matter that it's not real. It's just like that's how effective horror films work, and that's why they're so much fun. Is because they make you like think about these things that obviously can't happen. And it's just fun.
I interned at this company called Mythology, and this was before It Follows got into theaters, and they got like a screener for distribution, and they're like, can you watch this and tell us? And I watched it, and I hated the film, and I told them to pass on it, and I felt bad because it ended up doing really well. But I remember watching it and being like, this movie sucks, blah, 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 whatever. Like, later that night, I remember I drove home, parked my car, and I had to walk across the street to get to my complex. And I just remember it was at night, and I remember being so freaked out, like looking over my shoulder, making sure there was like no one like
no
walking.
Demons coming after you
and I was
shit.
like, damn, like even though I hated the film, like you said, like it still gets stuck in your head, like. That could happen.
Okay, this is unrelated.
And
I
the
have to tell a
Babadook
story
too
really
annoying.
quickly, but like a friend of mine told me that he was applying for this internship and they made him read a script and give them coverage as his like test or whatever, and he did it and he didn't get the internship or whatever, and he found the coverage like years later, and it was like, this movie is trash, it makes no fucking sense, no one will ever see it, it's gonna be garbage, and it was Arrival.
Oh wow.
Whoops.
Funny.
Well, maybe don't hire interns to read all your scripts, right?
But so this is something that I think is interesting about this current wave of horror movies. That I feel like it's inspired a lot of like recent great movies, because people who like filmmaker, like if you look at like M. Night Shyamalan, right? I feel like he's someone who is a very good filmmaker, but got really stuck in this mentality of making high concept, big budget, successful movies, and he just like started to fall apart basically, because he was like, you can only do that so many times, and like, but now that he's gone and made this movie like a movie like Split, it's like he's completely free to do whatever he wants, and he can really just allow himself to be a filmmaker and not worry about like, am I gonna get Mel Gibson in this movie, and is it gonna open big, and like and that, I think that inspiring by example is like, I mean, you know, I don't know anything about the process of Get Out getting made, but like, you know, who knows if he just looked around at the environment of what was going on and be like, I could make like a crazy genre movie, and like I could get funding for it through one of these companies, and like
I saw him actually speak at like a film independent thing, and he said that it took him like, I want to say like 8 years to write the script. And it was kind of like that thing you were saying, like I haven't seen, the start up is one thing, and then just as time went by, he was like, well, I haven't seen this specific thing, and to what the script kind of molded itself
And obviously
into.
he was busy. That's part of why it took him 8 years. He was really busy because he's really funny.
Key and Peele.
But yeah, you know what's a scary film that's like The Blair Witch? It's The Blair Witch. Blair Witch Project.
It doesn't sound scary.
You know what's a good
terrifying.
film that's underrated? The Blair Witch Project 2.
Is it?
I saw that in high school.
You didn't like it?
I didn't dislike it. I don't really remember it.
It was good. It was like really creepy.
It's about like, it's like these people didn't murder someone.
Yeah,
but they,
so it's like basically kind of like they're in this house for a reality show,
right,
or like some type of show, and then like the Blair Witch the Blair Witch had like infect or like possess one of the girls, so in the show, or as you're watching the movie, at the end, like she kills herself, she hangs herself, but then they go back and like, we've been recording this whole time, look what you did, and it makes it seem like they killed her
or something.
Yeah, it was really creepy.
Yeah, and it's fun watching horror films, the waves. Like the 80s is like all about slasher films, right? It's just tons of
and it's interesting too to look at, like, to me, if you look at slasher films and you have these movies that like the basic template is there's this massive silent behemoth that you don't understand but you can't kill, and then you look at the Soviet Union existing at the same time, and then if you go back and you look at like alien invasion movies,
the 70s,
like, well, if you go back to like the 50s, like
the 50s too,
like the Pod People,
The
Invasion of
Thing.
the Body Snatchers,
The original
the Thing,
Thing.
and you look at the fact that people were worried about communism infiltrating America, and it's this thing that you can't see that takes over the people who look just like you, and like you can see so many waves of like, you know, the and like if you can read interviews with Toby Hooper, is that his name, in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
or however you pronounce his name,
who he talked about how like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like, you know, he's watching like footage on the news of what's going on in Vietnam, and it's just like brutal slaughter. And so the idea of, in part of Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like, let's say this is a true story, because even though it's not a true story, we're watching on TV similar levels of violence, and no one is thinking this is horrifying.
What do you think is like for today? Like, what is
it's so hard, like when you live in the time,
Yeah,
right?
that's
To like
true.
say,
Like-
I mean, but I think if you look at the resurgence of zombies, like in the 28 Days Later era, that was the
ton of
Bush
zombies.
administration, and that was the war in Iraq, and that was this mentality of like post 9/11 of everyone just like getting in line and being a patriot and not thinking, and that ties into the zombie thing of being like a horde of people who aren't thinking and are just going and like attacking and
and we had the found footage phase. We had the remakes from the Japanese horror films with like the Ring and the Grudge.
One of my friends
and a bunch of other
is
ones,
in the
man.
Grudge.
Oh, really?
So we lived in Japan.
Joshua Jackson?
No. So I lived in Tokyo when the Grudge was made, and they needed extras for the university scene because that doesn't take place in Japan, I don't think, or something. They needed like white extras.
Oh.
So one of my friends is like walking by in the background.
That's funny.
And I don't know what the current sort of popular genre
there's
now.
that French wave of extremely violent,
Extremely
like martyrs,
violent.
what was
Tension,
that?
Martyrs,
What was it
Frontiers.
called? High
We
Tension?
watched Martyrs.
The one with the
didn't we?
lesbians?
That's High Tension is the one where she has a crush on her friend.
Yeah.
And someone
Yeah.
invade. That movie scared the shit
That
out
movie
of
was
me.
freaky.
It's so
Because she
violent.
ends up being the killer at the end, right?
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert!
My bad.
We'll put a spoiler alert at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah.
But I saw
There was a wave. There was Frontiers, there was Martyrs.
and I
there was
think
a bunch,
I feel
Inside,
like we're
there's a bunch
coming
of others.
into right now like this new wave of like artsy, almost like
Less violent,
feminist,
yeah.
but like so if you look at this is I'm talking like very recent. Like I just watched Raw. Have you seen that? That movie is fucking amazing. It's a Belgian movie. And it's kind of like in this Blumhouse kind of thing of like it's horror, but it's not really, and it's like has some really shocking violence, but like a lot of it is pretty kind of shot like a drama. But it's very clearly like this, almost like a feminist fable of like what happens to young women when they come of age and are exposed to all of these social kind of constructs that are trying to get them to be something. And then you had Revenge. I think it was just called Revenge, about that young woman who like goes on a revenge quest. And it's like the cover of the movie is just her covered in blood, and it's also made by a woman, and it's like a
I
feminist
heard
movie.
about that, yeah.
And
Is
then
it kind of
you
like
have-
a Spit on Your Grave? That
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
thing?
it's kind of like, and then there's, Gaspar Noé, who I fucking love, who did like Enter the Void, and his new movie, which just showed at Cannes, is called Climax, and it's about all these dancers, but it's rooted in the LGBTQ world, and it's all these dancers at a club in Paris, because he went out to a club where there were a lot of gay and trans, like, professional dancers at this club, and he's like, this is like the most amazing experience of my life, like, how do we turn this world into a movie?
Yeah.
And so the premise of the movie is someone puts some psychedelic drug in the sangria, and all these dancers are like drinking it, and then they start going insane, and like murders happen, and like, but it's apparently
fun.
really, really good. But I feel like when you have the feminism of a movie like Raw and a movie like Revenge is very overtly feminist, and then this movie Climax is like,
Suspiria's coming out, and that's set in
and I feel like
ballet.
like this might be like something that we're moving towards as like feminine or
Well, it's
horror as a vehicle for
Yeah, and
different
and it's
social,
also
Get Out obviously is like
Yeah.
a vehicle for social issues.
Same thing with maybe this is a social issue, but like, did you see Heredity?
I haven't seen that yet. No.
It's very much this. It's a horror. It's a family drama disguised as a horror film, but there is this idea of like listen to women kind of thing in the film.
And it's weird for me because horror has always been female characters have always been popular in horror films, and they're usually the hero, right? Even back in the 70s and
final
80s.
girl.
Like we were talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the girl was the main
But is
character.
is that because it's like this
I think it's
vicarious thing of men wanting to see women being tortured and killed and living in fear?
Well, that was the whole thing with the torture porn genre, which I didn't like those movies at all. I think it's more to
But
do.
Hostel was funny. It's
I
not
don't
a
think
scary,
so.
good
No.
horror movie, but it was funny.
I think the thing for me
The
with
scene where her eyes hanging out and she's at the train station, no one is like,
and
maybe
then she
we-
kills herself, right?
Maybe we should help that
right.
woman whose eye is hanging out. Everyone's just fucking standing there. It's ridiculous.
I think for me, it's more that they feel like a woman like in a situation like that is more helpless, and so it's like.
But
more
that's
of
like
a
an
victim.
inherently sexist
Yeah,
premise, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So should we wind to a conclusion here? Because I think we're on a time crunch.
Yeah.
So, closing thoughts on the new wave of horror.
I love it. Can't wait for the Nun to come out.
Is that all? I just saw a billboard
Nun.
for that today. I'm like, this is like something from 30 Rock. It's like Tracy Morgan has The Nun. I'm like, what is happening?
It looks scary.
It's like I mentioned, it's a spin-off of The Conjuring.
Is it really?
Yeah, The Conjuring has its own universe, and it's a
Okay.
spin-off.
Yeah.
And then also The Crooked Man's going to be from that, if you've seen the second one. So,
Sounds like Slender Man.
yeah, those movies are
Spin-offs.
so popular that they're creating a universe of movies, and it's like...
That's insane.
It's insane because The Conjuring, although was a higher budgeted film than like a Blumhouse film, I think it was like
It's like 20 million,
It was
wasn't it?
20
Yeah.
or $30 million, which still isn't that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of horror films, and I like it when they're not, sort of deemed like trash films. Like I like it when, horror is a viable genre, and it's not just like, oh, let's make a trashy horror film and put it in theater and whatever, we'll make our prestige drama film. It's like horror is a good genre, and there's a lot of
Well,
really
maybe
good...
it'll win the popular Oscar this
Yeah.
year.
Oh
right?
God!
No, it's gonna be Avengers or
Get rid of the
something like
popular
that.
Oscar. That's so stupid.
That's also like, if the film's not good enough to win the regular Oscar, then
Why give it
don't,
the popular?
don't give it the popular Oscar.
And what does that even mean?
Yeah, right.
Like,
Is it going to be based on box office?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah. It's dumb.
The
All
Meg's
right.
gonna win it.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Popular
If the
Oscar.
Meg,
Now I'm in favor.
if the Meg wins the popular Oscar, then we will have like some kind of party, and we will invite everyone who's listening to this podcast, and we'll
invite
watch the Meg, and we'll invite
the
Jason
cast.
Statham.
Yeah, we'll invite the cast. I don't know if they'll show up, but we'll invite them.
Okay.
But yeah, and what about you? Your thoughts?
I mean, I agree with you guys, and I really liked Raw. I just watched that, so it's like in my mind.
In your mind.
And I'm really excited for Climax because I love Gaspar Noé. But I mean, I'm just excited for the opportunities that like great filmmakers will now have. Like if they decide to go make a horror movie, someone's going to give them money, and we might get some really awesome stuff out of it.
Just don't make Babadook because it sucked.
I also didn't really like that movie. but-
Horrible. Film.
Did we see that together? Or am I misremembering that?
No, I saw it with my friend Aaron.
We might have seen it
Yeah,
together.
at the Cinefamily.
God, I
right?
wanted to kill that kid so bad.
Oh wait, I saw it at the Cinema Family. Maybe we did see it together.
And your friend was there too. Maybe we were
Yeah.
like sitting in different aisles, and we
Ah.
saw each other from.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Anyway, all right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
We'll be back.